All right, peeps, on today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the Genius will be doing another Hong Kong recap. Lots of gems, lots of Bruce Lee's house, cursed and a love motel, and lots of, yeah, you can sit in this chair. It was Yip Man's. No big. Let's get to it.
And every day, I practice martial arts.
Yo, Mikey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Seagong. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, wrapped in plastic. It's great to see you again. I swear it's been 2 hours since we recorded our last episode.
Oh yeah, it's been a decent while. You've been busy in between.
Yes, but here we have the rare weekend where we can kind of knock these out. So I just for those who saw the last episode, I was wearing this shirt, and now I put the. I'm going.
So you're doing a me then?
Yeah. So right. I'm just like, okay, now it's a totally different day, right? So here we are for another Hong Kong recap episode. Mm-hmm. So for those who have not been keeping up with us, we have been recapping our epic. Ultimate Hong Kong Kung Fu tour that we did this past August.
Oh,
yeah,
dear
really
God.
epic. It's interesting because I just I sent Bay Logan a text yesterday where he also had a birthday recently, and I was like, yeah, I'm already planning for promoting the Hong Kong tour for next year, and he's like, it's going to be tough to top that last one. And while certainly that trip was amazing, I have absolute confidence. Not that I can top it, but that I can create something of equal awesomeness.
I think you can definitely match it.
Because every trip, and I say this without any hyperbole or for the fact that I'm trying to sell more tours next year, every trip that I brought people with me to Hong Kong has always been awesome and fun and unique. Mm-hmm. And each one has been so, well, it's a bit redundant. It's been unique in a unique way, but each one has been awesome for a different reason.
Yes.
So every trip I've gotten the people who came with me to meet different people, whether they were martial arts folk or Hong Kong movie people, or we ended up going different places because there's almost like this synergistic effect of me having been to Hong Kong so many times and knowing so many people there that I could almost not plan the tour, just tell a bunch of people to meet me there, and just it would be awesome because I would be like, all right, here's what we're going to do today, and it would be spontaneous and awesome.
To be fair, that's kind of what you did up until this year for the tour. Previously.
Yes. So because this was the first tour that I opened to the public, meaning to people who weren't City Wing Chun students, I was like, okay, I really need to plan the living piss out of this. But of course, make sure that you have to build in some flexibility because you either have weather stuff or, Bay is like, hey, I have Mars from the Jackie Chan stunt team today. Okay, scratch whatever. We're doing that instead. So,
yeah.
So that's why, although this past trip, I have to say, was one of the most memorable trips I've had to Hong Kong, I don't even have a slightest amount of doubt that next year's trip is going to be completely awesome, and also for different reasons with a different crew, a different setup, but be equally as awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you'll still do some of the classics, obviously, like they'll be like,
Well, there'll be things that I'm always going to do on every tour because presumably I'm going to be bringing people who've never been to Hong Kong for the first time. So the gist of it is that I want the idea is if you only go to Hong Kong once, then go with the Kung Fu Genius. Yeah, go with the Kung Fu Genius, right? Because no one who's gone to Hong Kong for the first time with me has ever said like, oh man, no, that wasn't everything I expected and way, way, way more. What I'm most proud of is I've taken people who've been to Hong Kong before.
Yeah.
And were like, oh, yeah, I didn't see shit the first time I went, right? Antonio had been to Hong Kong before, but before he went with me, it was not the same. Our boy Bruce Willow had been to Hong Kong before. He'd even been to some of the places we went, like what we're going to talk about today, like Chinson Monastery. But it's another number when you come with the Kung Fu Genius because of the layers of, I suppose, history and context and why is this even relevant? Why is this even interesting, right?
Yeah.
So on top of all the geeky Kung Fu, Wing Chun, Bruce Lee stuff that we're always going to do, I also want to make sure that people see the normal sites. You know, if you're going to go to Hong Kong and you don't go to Lan Kwai Fong, that would be kind of a tragedy. Or you don't take a ferry across the harbor, that'd be kind of a tragedy, right?
Yeah.
So I make sure that I will, or go to the Peak.
Yes,
I make sure that there's plenty of like the stuff that tourists are supposed to do while they're in Hong Kong, while also doing all the stuff that you're not going to find in a tourist guidebook, right? So before we get started, all I want to say is the best way to support the Kung Fu Genius is on Patreon. Patreon.com/The Kung Fu Genius. For as little as $5 a month, you can support your favorite Kung Fu podcast out of New York City and get access to episodes early, which is pretty awesome. There's a bunch of other goodies there as well, like my subscriber reels from Instagram, so you don't need to subscribe there. And on Patreon, you get everything on Patreon. And also lots of little goodies. I'll post stuff on Patreon. Like one of the things I posted for our Patreons is the Andrew Lin's awesome vlogs of Hong Kong, because he released them publicly. Like one, I think as of this recording, only the second one is released.
Right.
But like the third and the fourth one, he let me release them to the Patreon. So there's always like extra little goodies like that that'll add there, and then higher levels of support. You could even get like a private episode with me, all sorts of other stuff. And we no longer do Ask Me Anything episodes from our YouTube commenters. You got to be on Patreon for those, but we still do take suggestions for topics for future episodes, because we want to do more singular topic episodes.
Yeah. So still do the topics. Put the topics in the comments of the YouTube.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Say, hey, KFG, why don't you talk about whatever, blah, blah, blah. And if it's
Ninja
good,
3, the domination.
Ninja 3, the domination. Yes. Yeah. Please suggest canon film related stuff. I won't oppose that. All right?
Yeah. Because you have to suggest it.
Yes.
We're definitely not just going to do it anyway, because we would totally do that.
We might. But sometimes we'll do something canon related.
Yeah.
And then, like our YouTube commenters will have they'll take that idea and come up with something a little bit extra that's a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
So, but for the Ask Me Anything episodes, those are only going to come from our Patreons. But in the meantime, we'll do more singular topic episodes. So yeah, patreon.com/The Kung Fu Genius. So yeah, so now we are in day 3. I think today we could probably reasonably do day 3 and day 4. Not that those days were any less action-packed than the other days, which we gave one entire episode for all of those days. But like day 1, there was a lot of like intro stuff, and there was a lot to talk about because it was the first episode we did. The second day was totally crazy as well. The third and fourth day were completely packed. But I think we could probably do them in one episode.
I think so. I mean, because the thing is, the first episode we also dealt with all of the preamble before the tour as well,
yes,
which is
exactly.
why we got to day 1. Day 2, absolutely crazy. Day 3, we're settling into our kind of tour lifestyle.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It was like kind of like midweek, we're doing the thing. So
day 3, we went to Chinson Monastery, also known as Castle Peak Monastery. And this is where they shot that iconic opening scene in it. Well, not the very first opening scene, but the scene with the student Lau. It's Lau's time, and the finger pointing away to the moon. The whole kick me bit there with Braithwaite. That was not so. When Enter the Dragon opens, they're at a monastery where he's squaring off with the legendary Sammo Hung. And by the way, one of the great things about being a Bruce Lee nerd is a lot of people are into Bruce Lee, a lot of people are into this stuff, but maybe they don't quite have the same level of nerdy encyclopedic love for the stuff that I do. Kenneth J, one of my really good friends who invited me to go to UFC, we talked about it on the last episode. He stayed with me for the week, and we were talking about Bruce Lee, and he didn't know that was Sammo Hung in the opening scene of Enter the Dragon. So I still get excited, not like, oh God, how can someone not know these things? I'm aware that what I know about Bruce Lee, some things might be common, some things might be really obscure. But if someone who's kind of into this stuff and I'm able to tell them something that I might think is kind of very common, I still get very excited about telling people things like that. I remember when I found out that was Sammo Hung at the beginning. That was a very cool day, and I was like, "Oh, that's Sammo Hung, right? Yeah, that totally makes sense." That opening scene where he has that fight, the kind of prototype mixed martial arts fight in the in the bathing suit with the fingerless gloves or whatever, that was not shot at Chinson Monastery. That was actually shot at another location. And so, but in the movie, it's implied that the whole finger pointing away to the moon scene is outside that temple, but that was actually shot at a completely different location.
Absolutely.
And that first scene in the movie is actually the last scene that they shot all together in Enter the Dragon. That's why Bruce, who was skinny throughout all of Enter the Dragon, because as we know, towards the end of his life, because of his work habit and everything like that, and the massive amounts of cocaine.
The rampant cocaine abuse.
The rampant cocaine abuse. He was, as he reported to Dr. Au, even in the November before he passed away, he was unable to keep weight on.
Yeah. It's what we call the Miami crack diet.
The Miami crack diet. Okay. I like how you say that's what we call, as if like this is a conversation we have regularly.
Okay, sorry, the royal we. I'm English. It's called this. I call that.
Yes, that's what the Queen called it.
Well, I mean, you know,
your late Queen called it what the Miami crack diet.
Miami crack diet. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd pay some serious money to hear those words coming out of the late Queen's mouth in that order.
I can guarantee you those words probably came out of Prince Andrew's mouth at one time.
I love when you rag on the royal family that we will get some comments of like your paisanos from your country who are like staunch royal defenders. And like, it's so funny because like in America, we have our own divisiveness, you know, right and left, are you for Trump, not for Trump or whatever. And it's kind of funny sometimes when like, if it's your country's thing, you're like into it. But if it's another country's thing, you just watch it while eating popcorn and it's funny. And I think the whole like, I mean, obviously the royal family should be abolished. I mean, obviously. Is anyone seriously defending the royal family anymore?
Unfortunately,
Piers
there
Morgan?
are still plenty of people that do that. Yes, Piers Morgan being one of them.
No, I say that. I mean, I know that that's like a big bone of contention among the people, right? But as someone who's got no skin in the game, it's just kind of funny to sit back and go like, oh my God, this is so funny.
You heard it here first, folks. The KFG is actually an abolitionist.
So I don't, you know, the first thing's like, well, you're not even a citizen, or they'd be saying in your accent, I presume, that I'm not even a citizen.
Well,
and I don't have
mate,
anything.
you're not even a citizen, are you?
Yeah, but seriously, a royal family, all right, calling people your highness. So what is the implication of that? Anyway, that's a topic for another episode.
Oh, absolutely.
KFG and Mikey Deane talk politics. Patreons only. So,
yes.
You know, it'd be really funny for us to talk politics that don't affect us at all.
To the geopolitical situation in Turkmenistan.
Yes, exactly. Right. So I will have a whole thing about like the necessity or not of the royal family. That'd be great. And then you can. Well, you're also American.
Absolutely.
So we have to talk Canadian politics. You have to talk Canadian politics. Although it's perhaps still somewhat related to.
Yeah, they're kind of, honestly, every time I've worked an event with a Canadian, and more than often than not, this is like a few years ago back when I used to freelance, I would work, and without fail, at least one Canadian would be like, oh, you're British, we're Commonwealth, we're like related. And I'd be like, okay.
Well,
like,
the amount of inbreeding that went on in your country, I mean, it is
still going on.
Yes, let's be fair. You could be related.
Yeah, I mean, I could be related to my own. No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
So what if you could transport back in time for a front row seat into the life and legacy of one of the most respected Wing Chun masters in history? Gong Sao Wong, a tribute direct students on Sifu Wong Chun Leung, offers you just that. Through a series of exclusive conversations, 25 direct students share anecdotes, reflections, and personal stories offering in-depth understanding of the man behind the legend. Order your copy today across 12 Amazon marketplaces with free shipping. I absolutely love this book, and I think you'll find it an indispensable part of your collection. I can't recommend it enough. Get yours today. Go to Amazon, type in Gong Sao Wong, and there you go.
So there was Bruce Lee in the last part of his life, really struggling to keep weight on. It was one of the things he complained to his doctor about. And so when you see that opening scene of Enter the Dragon where he fights Sammo Hung, that is literally the last video footage that exists of Bruce Lee.
Right.
And he's probably at the skinniest he'll ever be, certainly in front of the camera. I mean, shortly before he passed away, he was really skinny, looking really awful.
Yeah.
But there you kind of look at that opening scene is the last you really see of Bruce Lee, right? And then so I think that the following scene there with Mr. Braithwaite and the Laos shot at Chinchan Monastery, I don't think that was actually shot at that same time. I think they had already shot that.
Right.
And they were originally going to open with that scene.
Yeah.
To kind of establish him as like this kind of philosophical badass. And then they kind of thought, well, why don't we just establish him as a badass? And then they inserted that fight scene with Sammo Hung at the temple, right?
Yep.
So I brought on day 3 of the tour, I brought everyone there to Chinson Monastery, which is in Tunmun, which is in the New Territory. It's a little bit of it's not the longest, going to Fanleng to Yip Man's grave is a little bit longer, but you gotta take the train to Tunmun, and then it's about another 15 minutes or so walk to the base. And then it's another, well, depending on how serious you are about walking, it's a relatively steep hike,
Yeah.
It's so steep that sometimes if you don't have really good ankle flexibility, you have to turn around and walk backwards to go
Well,
up.
also just to sort of like ease it up on the calves a little bit as well. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
yes.
I mean, I actually enjoyed the train journey to Toon Moon a little more than the one to Fangling because you go through that whole open space and you can see Shenzhen.
Yes.
And that
Although
was the
you can
thing.
also see it on the way to Fanling. I may just not have pointed it out.
Because we weren't on the same train at that time.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
so you weren't able to benefit from my awesome narration.
No, because we'd left early because you were waiting for someone.
Oh, I see.
It could have possibly, which in their defense, it could possibly have been me because I feel like we had that moment where we got lost and we jumped on a train and they were like, "Oh no, we haven't left yet."
Oh yeah, that's right. You did fuck that up. Yeah, that was your fault.
Totally my fault.
So
Okay.
then, so that's why you went on the train and did not get my awesome. Because when I'm doing the ultimate Hong Kong Kung Fu tour, as you know, having
Yes.
done it, everywhere we go, KFG's got stories. This
Yeah.
is that. This is this. This is what you got to pay attention to. I know everything there, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why you didn't know. Yeah,
Yeah,
but you can see Shenzhen and mainland China kind of on the way to the new territories.
Oh, well, that's
yeah.
good to know. Well, okay. Well, anyway, I still preferred that journey to
Yes.
Chingseng.
So then we walked there. It's Toon Moon is a very industrial section of Hong Kong, lots of old factories and stuff. And then and you walk up there, and it is, I believe, the oldest Buddhist monastery in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. And what's great about it is that you can just go there. You know, normally certain temples, certain monasteries, there's a Qilin nunnery in Hong Kong, which is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But they are such assholes when you go there. And so I always struggle every time I go to Hong Kong. I'm like, should I bring them to the Qilin nunnery? It's like near Diamond Hill. It's relatively new. Very nice with like very Zen gardens and pagodas and stuff, but they get salty if you take photos there. They get really weird sometimes at that place. Yeah, they're not they're not the nicest on the Buddhist front. But Chinson Monastery, you can go there, and
if you can make it up that climb,
and you can walk around, take photos, do cool Bruce Lee kicks, and no one says anything. They're very, very cool. Of course, if you do go there, always be respectful. But
I'd just like to say from a personal thing, I'm going to harp on about this trek up there. I mean, it's fine. Like, it was cool. If you're fit enough, it's great. But I was walking up there with Victoria, and she was just like, I've had nightmares like this where there's something so steep we have to crawl up. I was like, yeah, I've had the same nightmare. It's just like we get to points where it's just, you're not actually crawling up, but it gets super, super steep, and you're just like...
Yes. You just got to keep going.
Yeah, and then you get to the top, and it's fine.
If you see Andrew's 4th episode of his vlog, which at the time of this video is not out publicly, our Patreons, I think, have it, you actually see the walk up there, and you can see how intense it was.
Yeah,
and there's some salty bits in there with you as well.
There's always salty bits with me.
So, of course, we went up there. One of my favorite things to do is to do the iconic slant kick, which is not a Bruce Lee thing. It's a Wing Chun thing.
Yeah.
In Wing Chun, it's that final kick from the Chum Kyu form. It's a left slant kick. A lot of people, they like to photograph that kick because your toe is turned outwards, very kind of a unique kind of hip opening kick. But a lot of people, when they do it, they don't really do the real, what I would call slant kick challenge.
Yeah.
And I would recommend all of our podcast listeners to do the slant kick challenge. Go hashtag slant kick challenge, right?
Yep.
Or let's make it hashtag KFG slant kick challenge,
Yeah.
all right? So if you go on my Instagram feed, you scroll, you'll see it. This photo of me there doing it. I think in this one, I was wearing my normal clothing. In previous years, did it in my Wing Chun uniform. But the idea is that you have to stand upright. Your body has to face the camera. And your kick has to go off to the side with the toe facing away from you. And you have to hold your hand in the flat style Fuk Sao, bladed sideways in the Wu Sao, right? And you have to hold it and then have the photo taken. Sometimes I see people, they call it like the twisting kick from Chum Kyu, and they hold their kick like all the way up here. But they're not holding it. They throw the kick up there, and the cameraman just takes a quick photo.
Yeah.
All right? So as a former Taekwondo black belt, if I just go to fling my leg up there, I can also put my leg up here, and you can take a photo, but that's not the slant kick. The slant kick, you need to be able to hold that thing there. Hold it like a statue and then take a photo, right? So that is a slant kick challenge, not lobbing your leg out quickly and having to go, take the photo quick. That's not the slant kick challenge. Slant kick challenge, can you hold that thing out there? So a bunch of our students did that. So I think Andrew did a side kick. He remembered to bend his leg this time.
Yes, he bent it enough.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we all got to do it. I did it, unfortunately, because of my janky ankle, I had to do it the opposite way.
You had to do it on the right side.
Yes.
Well, that's very advanced. That's Bacham Do.
So that was, I know, right?
You know, it's a big joke about the slant kick, right? Why is the Chum Kiu slant kick only on the left side? Because on the right side, you do it in the Bacham Do form, right? So it means by the time you're qualified to learn the knives, then I'll teach you the secret of the right kick, which is it's the same as the left. You just do it on the right. Don't tell anyone. All right?
Yeah, no, Andrew got a good one. Jose got a good one. Cara got some really good ones.
She got a really good one, yeah.
Seabuck Giuseppe got some great ones as well, which was super cool, and everyone else did. It was really great just walking around.
It's a great hike.
Yeah, Jose and I recreated the kicking scene between Bruce Lee and the student. I was the one that kicked him, Lau.
Yeah,
I was the one that kicked him. I didn't actually kick him, but there's a photo of us doing.
I think his name in real life is that kid is like Stephen Tong, something like that. He later went on to become a director. He apparently directed one of the Scooby-Doo movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yes. That guy who kicks Bruce Lee directed a Scooby-Doo film.
Well then.
Yes. Crazy, huh?
Yes.
Then after that hike, we headed back down, and I was having a little trouble deciding how to cross over the main street. And so then we met some Chinese lady, and then she was so excited that I could speak Cantonese to her. And instead of just telling us which way to go, she walked us around there. It was so cute. And then after that, we basically left the group to go get something to eat at the mall. We were going to meet later in the evening because we had something to do.
Oh, yeah.
I've been working on a project which feels like now forever. I haven't talked too much about it because I don't like talking about things that aren't. When I say I'm going to do something, I like to do it. I don't like to go I got all these pie in the sky projects and then never do them, right? But one of the things I've been working on now for at least 10 years has been a Yip Man documentary. And because, with all the Yip Man films, his real story, which I find way more compelling than the drivel they keep coming up with in the Yip Man films. I get it. These are movies. They have to pander to the mainland Chinese audience. They have to have action. And Yip Man's life story was not an action movie. It was a very dramatic story with, lots of bumps in the road and, in my opinion, far more interesting than the crap they keep coming up with. And while there are still a few remaining students of Yip Man around, I wanted to put a camera in their face and get as many of these stories as we could before it's too late. Because already at this point, think of all the students of Yip Man who've passed away who could have told you the best stories, right? While certainly we could be very thankful to Wong Sun-leung's students for having carried on a lot of the stories that he told them, but man, how much would I have loved to have had Wong Sun-leung around and had him for 1 hour.
Yeah.
And just say, tell me the story about how you joined, clarify these stories. How did Yip Man teach you? What was he like? What was he like outside? And just hear that stuff and to get it, And now we have to rely mostly on the recollections of people whom he may have told those things to, right?
Yeah.
But the idea of getting these kind of firsthand stories from people who were there, it's... every month that goes by, we're losing someone who could tell something, right? And, just think, so many of the greats are gone who could have told us stuff. Leung Seung, Lok Yu, Choi Sung Tin, all these guys are gone. And while, they did tell some things in some books and some videos and some interviews, but not in the way that I would find satisfying.
Yeah.
And I had originally started doing this project with another producer who ended up just being... put it not suitable for the project. The way he went about things, it just was not the way it was going to work. So then I kind of gave up on it. I gave up on the project, just going we had already filmed all this great stuff, but the guy who was doing it just, in my opinion, it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Right? And then so I was forget about it. And then in 2019, I kind of got a new fire relit under me to oh, come on, man, you really should do this documentary, because some people were encouraging me. And so I got a new team. you met Mark Oberdorfer in Hong Kong, right? It's amazing.
Yeah,
right?
Mark's fantastic.
And because one, he's German, I'm half German, so we get along. Like we understand, like he's my paisano. We're Germans, right?
Yep.
And but he lives in Hong Kong. He speaks Cantonese. He gets it. Like it's like a perfect person for me to work with in Hong Kong, right? And so we started. We decided to pick up this project where I left off, but do a new spin, not do it in the way that it was previously done, but kind of do it in a new way, partially because some of the subjects and some of the ideas, those people had passed away. So then, luckily, we were able to film a couple hours of footage of the late Sifu Chan-Chi Man, my good friend. And we shot it in his house, full 4K HD, mic'd up, perfect sound, everything. I was able to ask Chan-Chi Man all the questions I wanted to ask everyone who learned from Yip Man. These were mostly the same questions I would have asked if Wong Sun Leung were still alive. And I would have him the same types of things like, and it was also about them. What was your training like? How did Yip Man teach you? How did you do this? How did you learn the wooden dummy? How much did you have to pay? I wanted to know everything. And what was Yip Man's like? What was his character like? Did you ever see him fight? Did you ever see him do this? Did you ever see him do that? And we got all this amazing footage. And then I was so reinvigorated because the footage we got with Chan-Chi Man was so amazing. And then I'm like, yes, we're going to do this. And then the virus of unknown origins.
Ah, yes.
And then it was like kind of everything coming. It was like kind of kicking me right in the chops. But now on this trip, met up with Mark again, and he's pretty much like, hey, no, we still got to do this. Especially now, almost because Chun Sifu had passed away. And I have all this beautiful footage of him. It would be such a waste to not have it. And the great thing about Chun Sifu is he was so generous with his stories. But then while we were there, he demonstrated his long pole form. He demonstrated the long pole. He did the long pole form. He did the wooden dummy form. He even did some of the knives. He hit the wall bag. He demonstrated some stuff the way he learned from Yip Man. So we actually have him doing some stuff. And it's great. And so even if just to honor Chan-Chi Man, I want to do something with that. If the documentary, for whatever reason, doesn't get made, I will do something with that footage of Chan-Chi Man because I would consider it an absolute loss for that stuff to just be sitting on my hard drive, right? So in an effort to continue this project, we shot something with Sifu Kanspek for the Yip Man documentary while in Hong Kong. Because as some people may know, my Sifu is in possession of the very rare footage of Yip Man performing in 1967 at the San Po Kong Detectives Club, which is, everyone knows the photo, the black and white photos of Yip Man performing on the wooden dummy. But what they don't realize is at the same time he shot those photos, he also shot Super 8 video, which was shot by Tang Sang, and it was in Tang Sang's possession until he died. And then that footage made its way to Sifu Kanspek. And this footage has never really been shown openly, besides one or two little clips which are floating on YouTube. One Bug one with the, because many people said Leung Tang, oh, he was a liar, he didn't have this footage. So just to kind of tease everyone, they released the footage of the one Bug one from the long pole form, and then the one kind of cross kick from the dummy, just to go like, oh, you see this footage? Yeah, we have it. But then not release the rest of it, right? And, some students, within the WT lineage, myself included, have been lucky enough to see this footage. But I wanted to get Sifu Kanspek on video talking about it and talking about his history with Yip Man, Wing Chun, and learning from Leung Tang and all this kind of stuff. So we went to a capoeira school there in Tsim Sha Tsui, and you were the sound guy, and we shot a pretty awesome video footage of Sifu Kanspek for about an hour, talking about his history, how he started learning Wing Chun from Joseph Chang and then later from Leung Tang, and how he learned it. And he was very candid about certain aspects of his relationship with Leung Tang. And then we also talked about the Tang Sang footage. So that was pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah, that was great. Everyone else was eating weird food, which you see in Andrew's vlog. But
yes,
we were
getting first-hand stories, right? It was amazing. And then after that, we went and did a touristy thing that night, which was to go to the peak.
Yeah, super touristy. Also great, but very touristy.
Yes, but if I only brought the tourists to the Kung Fu stuff and didn't take them to the peak, and then they come back and they tell, oh, you went to Hong Kong, did you go to the peak? No. Did you go to Lan Kwai Fong? No. I was like, well, what did you do in Hong Kong? I looked at Bruce Lee's house. It would be a little weird. So that's why I want to make sure, for everyone who comes on the tour, if this is the only time you ever go to Hong Kong, then you're going to see all the main things you want to see. Now, there's so much to see in Hong Kong. You cannot possibly, like, when we left, there was like, oh man, I didn't take you here, didn't take you here, didn't take you here.
Yeah.
But you're going to come back anyway, so I'm not worried about that. But that's the thing, is that there's so much to do that every tour that I do can be unique and amazing in its own way, and will make people who didn't go on it feel jealous for whatever reason.
Yes.
So we went with the big group to the Peak. Now, for people who don't know what the Peak is, it's on the Hong Kong Island side above all the big skyscrapers, and you have this glorious view of Victoria Harbour, of Kowloon, of you can look a little bit into the new territories. You can't really see over it, but you can kind of see in that direction, and it's the most iconic view. And if you go there at nighttime when the lights come on, it's amazing. So the best time to go to the Peak is right before the end of the day, so you get the daylight view of it, and then as it gets darker and the lights come out, and then you see that, it's an awe-inspiring view.
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, we ended up taking cabs up there because the buses were a little bit unreliable, but it was a super cool ride up to the top.
Yes. So pro tip, if you're not, pro tip is go on the 2024 Ultimate Hong Kong Kung Fu Tour with the Kung Fu Genius.
The proest of tips, by the way.
The proest of tips. But if you do not go there, and you're in Hong Kong and you want to go to the Peak, all right, there's a tram that you can take up that brings you up to the Peak. That is a tourist trap, okay? It is very expensive, and you just sit in this thing and you basically just go up in a straight line up to the Peak. You don't really see too much. But what you should do is, if you take the ferry across, instead of taking the MTR, you take the ferry across the harbor, right there by the big Ferris wheel, and you go and you take a bus.
Yeah.
There are buses, you have to look at the schedule, that will bring you up to the Peak. Or you take a taxi up to the Peak. That is way better than taking that tram that just goes straight up, because you go up this windy path and you see the view up there, and you're going up these hills, and it's a lot of the Hong Kong that you've seen in movies and in car chases and stuff like that. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're going up there, you'll actually pass by a very, I don't know what's in there right now. It escapes me a little bit. There's a very old building on the way up there, and that was the building that was the external shot for Han's Palace. Oh. So when you watch Enter the Dragon, there's an establishing shot of Han's Palace from the outside, either very early on when Bruce is getting the briefing or later. That establishing shot is not. It's not where the movie shot. It's not Han. It's actually this one building that's on the way up to the Peak.
Right.
And so if you're eagle-eyed, you'll see it and you'll go, oh, that's Han's Palace, right? And so the view is just much better. So take the bus or take a taxi up to the Peak. Now, the Peak is also a big thing for Van Damme fans.
Yeah.
Because that's where he did the split, when he's kind of clearing his mind to get ready after, Jackson got his head kicked in by Bolo. And then he's up there and he's doing his thing. And what's interesting is you could see from that shot, which was shot in 85, 86, something like that, to the view now, you see how much it's changed.
Yeah. First
of all, there are way more buildings now than even in the 1980s. When you see the opening scene of Enter the Dragon and you're over Victoria Harbour, there's like none of the buildings that are there now, and the harbor was much wider back then because they've had to put reclaimed land to build it in to put more structures, because as population grows and real estate, well, what happens if you don't have land to build on? You build land in Hong Kong, apparently. You build land to build stuff on, right? So we went up there and it was cool. I went there with, Sifu, everyone. Sifu Kanspect was up there, and we got photos with my Sifu at the Peak. Bruce Willow went up there and did the famous Van Damme split.
Yep.
And
shout out to Bruce.
Shout out to Bruce Willow. It was a really, really great time. And that was day 3. So really action-packed, filming stuff, Peak, going this place, going that place was awesome. The next day was also pretty cool. And it culminated in one of the coolest moments and unexpected moments. But it was very indicative of all the trips that I go on with students. Like, we have a basic plan where we might go or whatever, and then stuff happens that we never could have expected, and it goes then above and beyond expectation, right? And the next day, we, started as we always do with some training in the park. We had our breakfast, and then we did a tour of Mong Kok.
Yes.
All right. Mong Kok being just north of the Yau Ma Tei district. Mong Kok is part of Kowloon. It is where a lot of kung fu schools were back in the day. It's a very local place. I mean, it's not uncommon to see foreigners or expats in Mong Kok, but it's definitely more like it's more, you're getting more into a local place. It's not like being in Tsim Sha Tsui.
Absolutely.
And, you know, some tourists will go to Lady Street to the night markets, but in Mong Kok, you're already starting to feel like it's a little more local, right? Mong Kok is also the area where Yip Man lived in the last part of his life, 149 Tung Choi Street, which was just like a block or two away from the Wing Chun Athletic Association, was part of the night market, or at the end of the night market, which is known as Lady Street, Lo Yan Gai. And that's where Yip Man lived. I took you guys, I showed you that place there. What I like about Mong Kok is there's lots of specialty shops there.
Yeah.
If you want to do some cool shopping, they have entire malls that only sell computers and electronics. And so if you want like to get computer stuff, you go to like the computer mall, and then there's like the video game mall, and then there's like the camera mall, and then there's the anime mall that has all the anime stuff, right?
Absolutely,
and
which
you
is
guys,
awesome.
And they had like collectibles, they had like the Donnie Yen Yip Man collectibles and stuff there.
That was amazing. That was like when I went there, we went there with Sven and Vicky, and John Rubio was there as well, and then it was like, I think George and Ryan was with us.
Yeah.
And I managed to persuade Sven to get like the alien mother thing that he was like, I don't know if I'm going to get it. I'm like,
get it.
You know you want it. He got it. But there we both took photos. It was like, it wasn't just the Yip Man action figures. They actually had an action figure of the table scene from Yip Man 2.
Yeah.
Right. So he got like a miniature Sammo Hung and a miniature Donnie Yen on a table.
Right.
And I was like, I can't afford to buy it. I can't afford to buy it. I can't take it back.
I can't afford not to buy it.
It'll still be there when we go back next year,
yes.
along with those alien
Yes.
masks, predator masks. Thank you, Tommy Lynn. But yes, it's fantastic. Anyway, sorry, I was just geeking out there.
The most frustrating part of that tabletop fight scene, and mind you, my friend Lo Mong is in it. He's got a very good fight. Is when Donnie Yen fights I believe the late Feng Hat On, and Feng Hat On crosses his legs in front of him and just stays in that pose, and Donnie Yen, like an idiot, is just standing in front of him like this. It's like, okay,
kick him over.
Wing Chun pro tip: if your opponent crosses their feet in front of you and they pose in that, well, first of all, if they just did it, it's a rule of martial arts never to cross your feet, right? Especially in boxing, you never cross one foot over the other. Now, there are exceptions, like when you want to take someone's back.
Yeah.
In wrestling, you'll actually use the opposite foot to go behind. In the Wing Chun wooden dummy, we have the Subti Toi, which we use to get behind someone because it's much faster than trying to shuffle behind someone. You take one full step, right? But you don't pose with your crossing your feet in front of someone and stay there, right? And so that's one of the things. It's like, I get it's a movie. They need to up the drama or whatever. But like, Donnie Yen is playing our beloved patriarch. And like Wing Chun 101, your opponent crosses their feet in front of you and stays that way, all right? Do something. This person is handing you a gift, okay? If someone crosses their feet in front of you and goes into a pose, I don't know, kick them full power with a front thrust kick while their legs are crossed. I don't know, step in and punch them. I don't know, take your hand back here and slap them across the face. Doesn't matter. When someone crosses their feet in front of you, you do something, all right? And I remember watching that and just going, what? I saw better Wing Chun in the movie 300, all right? So anyway, Mong Kok's got all these like cool specialty malls and stuff. And even though it's obviously harder and harder to find because all, films are all on digital media now, but, Mong Kok would be the place where you could find a shop that still had some DVDs or VCDs somewhere. Like that might be, there'll be like one little shop, one little corner there, right? Bay Logan told me a very funny story, in the early time period moving to Hong Kong. When he was still a little bit green and he was, meeting all of these movie stars for the first time. And he told me he went into like a video store, like probably was still VHS at that time, where, he wants to get old Kung Fu movies, and he wanted to get those old Kwan Tak Hing Wong Fei Hung movies, like the ones that were shot in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, like the stuff that Bruce Lee grew up watching. And you can see some of those, and now, that some of those things you can find some of that stuff online, but he was looking for like videos, like he wanted like videotapes, and because Bay told me at that time it was very difficult to find. You would only see those old Kwan Tak Hing Wong Fei Hung serials on TV late at night at 2 a.m. they would show like, Wong Fei Hung challenges 10 masters, with that would be the name of the film, right?
Yeah.
Shot in 1954, and it was, the iconic Kwon Ta King playing Wong Fei Hung. And he said that he went in there, and one of the famous actors from those films was a guy named Zhou Dahua. And Zhou Dahua was like, he was like one of, like up there with Kwon Ta King. And Bae told me he was like in one of those stores, and he was like, I really want to get these old Kwon Ta King movies, and like, do you know where I can get it? And the guy who was there, very typical Hong Kong Chinese clerk, like, meh. If it's not something they have, they're not interested because they can only make money with the stuff that they can sell in the store.
Yeah.
You're coming at them with like, oh, do you have this thing? It's like, I don't want to order. It's like, buy the shit I have here.
Yeah.
Don't make work for me. And Bae kind of implied, the guy was like a little dismissive, like, no, we don't sell that old shit. But then the guy said, I don't know, but you might want to ask that guy over there. He might know something about it. And Bae turned around and it was Zhou Dahua in the store.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yes. So it's like, yeah. And then he said he tried to talk to him, but he was very like, oh, no. Like, he's very low key and didn't want to talk about that. What also reminds me, like, when I first moved to New York in the late 90s, before I went to Germany, when I moved back to the East Coast, before I moved to Germany to do Wing Chun full time, one of my friends from Seattle came with me to visit, like, hey, come on, hang out with me in New York. And we just ran around New York and had a good time. And we were at, remember when there used to be record shops?
Oh, yeah. I went to all of those before they shut.
There was a chain, I think it was Tower Records.
You know, there's still a tower in Tokyo.
Really?
A proper, like a full Tower Records. It's still really big in Japan.
No kidding. So I think it was at Tower Records. It was up by...
Yep, I know,
Sex and the
68.
City. Yeah, up there. Yeah, it was that one, right?
Yes, yeah. That was...
by Lincoln Center, a little past Lincoln
it's
Center.
an Apple
up there.
store now.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Makes sense. So I went in there and like, because they had a nice international section. They had like Hong Kong soundtracks and things like that. So I'm in there with my buddy. We're looking at music, and my buddy goes, yo, check out Antonio Banderas over there, right? Like a guy who looks like Antonio Banderas. And I looked up, and it was Antonio Banderas.
Of course.
And I was like, oh no, bro, that is Antonio Banderas. Like, really? He's from Seattle. He's not used to seeing celebrities except Bill Nye the Science Guy and Chris Novoselic, right?
Absolutely.
And it was like, oh, that is Antonio Banderas. Like, you can't say that shit in New York because they might actually be the guy you're talking about, right?
That's the joy of living in New York, though, isn't it? I mean, it's like if you don't see a celebrity once a week, then are you really going out?
Yeah, you're not going out. If you don't automatically or accidentally bump into someone, right? I remember one time I was in Times Square and someone rushes out of a car into a door, like it's rushed, and I look up, it's Beyonce.
Wow.
And he's like, oh, right? And he's like, but that's actually a very normal thing in New York.
You're not supposed to, there's a New York thing, which I didn't subscribe to for the first couple of years. I'd meet people I would really respect and say, hey, I would always respect for I really like what you do and just leave it at that. I wouldn't be like, oh, autographs or the photos. Yes. But I remember my ex-wife used to get so bent out of shape if ever we saw a celebrity and I'd just be like... Said something. She's like, we just don't do that in New York. And I'm like, well, I'm from London. I don't give...
That's why a lot of celebrities like living here, because they can walk down the street and people more or less leave them alone.
No one
the
cares.
only person that's going to say anything is like a tourist or something like that, right?
Yeah, that was me. That was me once. You know what I mean? I remember my niece came over a few years ago, just before the pandemic, and she was like 19, and she's fantastic, very worldly wise for her age and everything. And we were walking down in the financial district, down in Tribeca rather, and there was Liev Schreiber.
Wow.
And she was like, right at the end of Ray Donovan, and she was just like, I was like, oh yeah, no, it's this is New York.
Yeah.
It's just like,
yeah. Well, so I had a similar experience in Hong Kong, seeing how Hong Kong people react to celebrities. Although Lo Mong from Five Deadly Venoms is not like, he still acts and he's in the Yip Man movies and stuff, but he's not like a celebrity that maybe like all the young kids know, right?
Yeah.
But I actually walked like through Hong Kong with Lo Mong. And it was funny because you could see there was a very clear line of an age demographic of people who knew who he was and people who didn't.
Yeah.
If the person was like approaching 50 and older, they knew who he was. And if they were like in their 20s, they just walked by, right? But it was funny because I was walking with him, and then like you'd see like some older guy look at him and then look at me and then be like, wait, is he hanging out with some white guy? What's up with? And they would look at it, and it was funny because the Chinese are very bad at hiding their facial expressions in public.
Oh yeah,
and it was like they'd look and be like, and like, what's going on there? You just walk by. It was really funny. And I remember I saw Lei Hoi Sang he's like a veteran. You ever see 36 Chambers?
Oh, of course, absolutely.
So you know that like when Sante wants to create his own chamber, he has to get permission, so he has to fight that other monk.
Because he's my favorite monk in that whole film.
Yes, that's Lei Hoi Sang.
Oh yeah, I can never remember his name, but I love him, and he's in tons of all those other short films.
In Project A, he's always like a villain or like a second. He's always like a bad guy. He's like a character actor.
Yeah.
But he in real life, he's actually a Wing Chun guy. He learned from Chiu. He studied Wing Chun in real life.
Right.
He was actually at Yip Man's funeral. I thought it was very young, and I have a photo of Lei Hoi Sang was at Yip Man's funeral. A number of years ago, I was in Hong Kong at a fish market, and Lei Hoi Sang was there like buying fish, and I was like, like no one paid it because he was like it's like an avuncular old man no one pays any attention to, right? But I'm like, it's Lei Hoi Sang, veteran stuntman, villain, all that stuff, and I just like I saw and I probably was more starstruck than I seen Jackie Chan. Because you see someone who's a mega big star, you're like, oh, mega big star. Oh, okay, right? But then you see someone who's like very niche from your childhood, and you're like, oh. And like, I wanted to say something, but like, I was like, oh, what the fuck am I going to say to Lei Hoi Sang? Like, I really liked you in 36 Chambers. Oh, that movie where I played an asshole. I really like you in Project A Part 2. Oh, that movie where I played an asshole. Like, you know.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but it's cool. But in Hong Kong, they also tend to kind of leave them alone a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
I think unless it's like the absolute A-list at the peak of their whatever, but yeah.
Yeah, I have an experience like that with a character actor, but I'm not going to just relate it to the podcast because it's completely irrelevant. I'll tell you afterwards.
Oh, great.
So there you go.
Perfect.
So, and I'll tell anyone else, but like for this.
Patreons can find out who it is.
Yes, absolutely. It's quite fantastic. It's been back when I used to live in London. Anyway, so Mong Kok.
Yeah, so Mong Kok, we went around there. We did, I took them to we walked past where Yip Man lived, and I showed you the best Dan Tat place in all of Hong Kong. And then we walked by the Wing Chun Athletic Association. We didn't go in this time just because there wasn't anyone around at that time to open it up. It's not the most spectacular place. But, you know, it is part of our Wing Chun history.
I'd just like to also point out, going back a little bit further again to the beginning of the day, I was actually on time, and then we were going to leave in the subway, and Andrew, of all people, decided that he wanted to have a water. And I decided to wait back with him, and everyone left without us.
Sounds about right.
So like, I was just like, Andrew, you're making me look bad. So like
2 days in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had to kind of follow back while like Jose kept trying to share his location. We finally made it to you when you were relaying the story about meeting Liu Jikeng.
Oh yeah. You know what's so great is like we were sharing location on the iPhones all throughout Hong Kong because it's an easy way. And half those people forgot to stop sharing location with me. So I have worldwide locations of all sorts of people. I can find you right now, right? It's so great. But to be fair, I think they also still might have mine. I don't know if I stopped sharing my location with them.
How would you like to go to Hong Kong with the Kung Fu Genius? Experience Hong Kong like no one else. Take the ultimate Hong Kong Kung Fu tour with live commentary from yours truly, the Kung Fu Genius. Visit hot tourist spots as well as off the beaten path locations, perfect for Wing Chun and martial art enthusiasts. If you ever wanted to go to Hong Kong to see Wing Chun sites, movie stuff, and of course experience this amazing city, here's your perfect opportunity. To reserve your spot, click on the link in the description of this episode for all the information you need and for booking. And I'll see you in Hong Kong.
So then we walked past the house of Liu Jikeng, and I related that story of what he told me about seeing the fight between Lau Tai Chun and Bruce Lee. If you want to hear that, actually Bruce Willow has that whole story on one of his recaps, right? So I'm not going to repeat it here. Check out Bruce Willow's awesome Hong Kong recap videos. Some of that stuff is on there.
Yep.
And then we went to Bruce Lee's Kowloon Tong home, which has now changed. They demolished it just like a few years ago, and they rebuilt a house in its place. Which, of course, it's kind of like, it's not really the same house. But the new house that they built, which is really quite nice, They built it on the same exact spot of the lot because it's basically a kind of a rectangular house.
Yeah.
And they built it on the same corner of the lot, and it's like the same size.
Yeah.
So the new house is kind of like a new renovated old house of his.
Yeah.
So it's like they didn't expand it or change the design or make it extra floors or make it wider. So when you go there, yeah, like the gate is a little bit different. It's not the exact same place or whatever. But even before they demolished it, I mean, that place was in such a state of disrepair. The entire lot was paved because it had at one point become a love motel. And for people who don't know what a love motel is, there's always like a tacit kind of understanding that there's something seedy going on in a love motel, but that, at least in the case of Hong Kong, is not necessarily the case.
No.
It's that because Hong Kong is so prohibitively expensive, like New York, that many people still live with their parents until it's time to get married because it is so expensive to get a Hong Kong apartment. So in order to save money, you live at home until it's time to really move out when you get serious about being with someone or you get married, right? So it's not uncommon for adults to still live with their parents or their family. It's stigmatized here in the States. Man, if you're 24 and still living at home, people give you a hard time. In Hong Kong, that's a very, very normal thing. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with living at home at 24, man. If I could go back, I'd be like, I'd live at home until now.
But your parents would be like,
No, get out, right?
No.
I was so excited to get out of my parents' house when I was 18. And like, if I could only go back, you could stay there a few more years. Save a little bit of money, young Alex Richter. Mm-hmm. Don't be so eager to go out into the world. So, but because, in Hong Kong, apartments are very small. Not unlike New York apartments, but smaller for the most part. And so you really share, sometimes you have to share a very small room, or you're in just a very small, very cramped apartment with mom, dad, sometimes grandparents. And so if you have a girlfriend and it comes time for the bom chicka wow wow, you can't do that at home. Because you can't go into your tiny room in the tiny apartment where everyone is going to hear what you're doing. Not to mention the whole maybe mom and dad don't know you have a girlfriend and wouldn't approve of her. And you can't go to her house because dollars to donuts, her living situation is the same as yours. Mm-hmm. So that is why when you go to Hong Kong, there is an excessive amount of hourly motels. It gives foreigners the impression that there's like nothing but prostitution going on. Exactly. All right, you're like, oh man, you have all these hourly motels to take your woman for hire, right? The woman of ill repute with an excellent reputation.
Yeah.
But no, it's actually because that's where most kind of couples can hook up.
Yeah.
So, but don't get me wrong, other seedy things go on as well, for sure. And so the house that Bruce Lee lived in 41 Cumberland Road, at some point, I believe in the 80s and 90s, was turned into an hourly love motel for people in the Kowloon side. It was interesting because when you think of love motels in Hong Kong, you usually just think of like a floor in one of those multi-story cramped Hong Kong old buildings. But Bruce's home and most of the places in Kowloon Tong are standalone homes. Right. So it was like a standalone home love motel. Ooh, so kind of fancy, right? So that meant for years people were getting it on in Bruce Lee's old home. Right? Which is, because there'd been a somewhat weird, sordid history about Bruce Lee's home. Bruce Lee moved in there late 1972. So he didn't even live in that house for an entire year before he passed. And from what I understood, it was really kind of a Tupac and Suge Knight kind of deal where like Raymond Chow actually owned the house. Right. It was kind of like, Suge Knight was giving Tupac like furs and cars and stuff, but he wasn't paying him. Yeah. So there's a little bit of that going on, I believe, it was actually Raymond owned it, or Golden Harvest owned it as a business write-off, but Bruce was living there. Same thing with like Bruce's Mercedes. That was Raymond's old Mercedes. That's why it was all dinged up. Not to mention, most people said Bruce Lee was a shitty driver and he was probably dinging it up himself. But when Bruce got that Mercedes SL with the license plate AX 5 something, whatever it was. That was Raymond's old car. So Bruce was getting some hand-me-downs and some borrow-me's from Raymond, including that house. After Bruce Lee died, the Hong Kong Chinese are very superstitious. And there's lots of weird superstitions like, Bruce was Lei Xiu Long, the little dragon, living in Gao Long Tong, which is the 9-dragon pond. And then they're like, well, it's so funny like how people kind of create these like superstitious narratives in reverse order after the fact. Well, it was so obvious Bruce Lee had to die because you see, according to Chinese feng shui, if everyone followed feng shui, everyone in China would be rich. All right? According to Chinese feng shui, the little dragon is living in 9-dragon pond, and it's like too many dragons competing for dragon energy. And of course, the little dragon gets swallowed up in that big dick 9-dragon energy of Kowloon Tong, right? And it's like, it's just so obvious, right? You know what I mean? Like something, it's like, because we're pattern-seeking primates, something happens. People look at these all weird causal connections, and then they create a narrative, and it's just so obvious. It's the feng shui that killed Bruce Lee. How can you be the little dragon living in 9-dragon pond? Obviously, you will die of some weird means in your mistress's apartment. It's written in the feng shui. I mean, it's like, are you kidding?
Well, I believe it.
I believe it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So after Bruce Lee died, I don't know if immediately after, I don't think it was immediately after, because the Shaw Brothers superstar Alexander Fusheng came into prominence in the late 70s. And one of the things I guess he did once he became a big star was to move into his idol's former home.
Right.
So Alexander Fusheng moved into it, but I believe that was way later. So someone, I don't know the whole history of the house. I don't know who had it in between Bruce Lee or Golden Harvest owning it and then Fusheng living there. But almost 10 years to the day, Alexander Fusheng died in a car crash while living at the same house. So the Hong Kong Chinese are like, that house has got bad juju, all right? Like, you cannot be there. Oddly enough, both Bruce Lee and Alexander Fusheng died while living at that house, but not at that house.
Yeah.
But that's enough for the Chinese to go, no, this is like, there's some bad dick energy of this place here, right? So then at some point, it became a love motel because at least, if it's got bad luck, then might as well just make it a house of ill repute to bring your girlfriend of excellent reputation too. So then at some point, I think some Chinese businessman owned it, and then it was going back and forth. And for the longest time, they wanted to, it had been bandied about like they should buy it and turn it into a Bruce Lee museum, and then it's like, the former home, and then you can make it into something cool. And the fans loved it. But as anytime there's a good idea regarding Bruce Lee, you can
see where this is headed.
You can always rely on the Bruce Lee estate to fuck it up. All right? Okay? If there's ever a good way to promote Bruce Lee, then the Lee estate will just do the opposite of whatever that is. If there's ever an opportunity where something really good can come out, they'll figure out a way to fuck it up. And so I know this because I had a friend. Fortunately, he passed away a number of years ago. His name is Paul Wong. He worked for the Hong Kong government. And he told me many years ago, I said, how come they never turned it into like a Bruce Lee museum? He said, well, they were in negotiations. But basically, the Lee estate, I will not say who. It's either the mother or the daughter. Doesn't matter. Okay, but we're just going to say the Lee estate. Okay, all right? Well, because at some point the daughter took over for the bomb, so I'm not going to say under which regime this was in.
I'm just saying that, it sounds like there's that many more people when it really just narrows it down to 2. So it really doesn't.
And what they've done in Bruce Lee's name is awful. So apparently they, to make a long story short, they wanted the Hong Kong government to foot the bill for buying the place, setting it up, getting all the exhibits, running it, all the operational costs, everything. But they wanted to earn all the money from it.
Oh, so it seems perfectly reasonable.
Perfect deal.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, you build everything for me, and I'll earn all the money, and thank you. All right. So, no, they decided not to do it. And so then eventually they demolished the house about 2 years ago, and then there's a new house there. Presumably someone is living there, someone owns it, and that's the house we brought you guys to, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So then shortly after that, I had to have another meeting that day.
Yeah, you had to bounce to see it.
I had to have lunch with my good friend Wan Kam Leung. And Wan Kam Leung, famous student of the late Wong Sun Leung, had never met Sifu Kanchpek, my Sifu. And here they are, they're both, kind of two giants of the Wing Chun world in Hong Kong. So I was able to bring Sifu Kanchpek to meet Wan Kam Leung in Hong Kong. And we went and we had lunch, and one of Sifu's friends named Jesper, who's like a Dane who's married to a woman from China, and he's like a big researcher in Wing Chun. He came along, and that was really the first time I had a chance to meet him. I'd only corresponded with him a couple times on Facebook. And then, there were a few other people there. It was very interesting. It was cool to see them together. We had great photos, a really, really good dim sum. And while I was doing that, you guys got a very special treat.
Oh, yeah. While you were going off having food with Wing Chun legends, as is the want of this last tour.
Yes.
We all bounced back to the Marshall Club.
Yeah, to Bay Logan's place.
Bay Logan's place, right? And we're just like, it's like Ryan took us back. We're like, we'll just get back, just jump on the train. It was all very kind of loose.
Yes.
Well,
as we talked about the last episode, how much we love the Marshall Club. And it's just, if you have nothing in particular to do in Hong Kong, you can't really you can do no wrong just showing up there and hanging out. Because you never know who's going to show up. Absolutely. And also just being there with all the stuff to see and do is just so much fun.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So tell them what you guys did.
Okay, so, we headed back on the train, got some food, got some beers, and then we watched Enter the Dragon, which, of course, we've seen numerous times before. However, we had Mr. Bay Logan
as the live commentary. Yes.
So, and it was amazing and hilarious, and I will never watch that movie the same again.
No, absolutely not.
Because I've seen things that I can no longer unsee.
And you know what's funny? For all the years I've known Bay, I've never watched Enter the Dragon all the way through with him commenting on it. When I finished my lunch with Wan Kam Leung, I quickly headed up to the Marshall Club, and I just caught the tail end. But what Bay was able to explain, I was like, and I've seen that movie many times, and I know a lot about some of the film flubs and some of the dialogue changes and some of the behind the scenes, this and that. But there's what I know about Enter the Dragon, and then there's what Bay Logan knows about Enter the Dragon. And just I think I was able to get there for about the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And what he told me just blew my mind. Even the shadow of the camera on the wall, and also what the alternative dialogue was, and scenes that were cut out in between.
Oh yeah. So it was it was factual and hilarious at the same time.
Right. Yeah, because he was saying funny things about the characters and things. Right?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm not. No, but there were other funny bits in it that were just super hilarious.
Did you just edit yourself in live time? You're like, yeah, but there's no. I'm not gonna say that bit, right?
Yeah, no, I won't say that bit for fear of someone getting super upset and us being cancelled. But it was the bits when he was pointing out, because all of the stuntmen that were kind of all of these great future Shaw Brothers superstars
and Golden Harvest, in the background,
right? So there's the bit when the big fight scene that's underground after he's stuck the snake into the thing, and there's he throws Jackie Chan, and then Lam Ching Ying comes in, he gets thrown there, and all this kind of stuff, and you're just pausing it each time. You're like, oh, yes, it is. Oh my God, it's this and that and that, and it's just Mars is there somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, things you didn't realize, right?
Absolutely. But my favorite bit of it was when here's the scene, they're all doing the big fight at the end in the tennis courts, and I go, oh look, who's that over there directing? And it's Bruce Lee.
It's Bruce Lee directing. Yeah, that was a famous flub I had known about that one before, but it was very funny.
Yeah, I cannot unsee that now.
Yeah, or the extra when Bruce Lee does the multiple kicks, that guy's face, and the extras laughing in the background, right? And then of course we go oh man, that is obviously a film flub, and I had seen that before, but Bay had a very interesting take on it. He's in the story, that's his buddy getting kicked and he's laughing.
Yes,
right? Because they would be Han's men, right? Yeah. So it's like, wait, you don't want that guy kicking your boy's ass, but he was like laughing, right?
I think he's going to go see this guy next. This is about to be the best day of his life. And he starts, and then you just see him just do the big smile. Yes. And then he was like, oh yeah, his boy, just watching him get kicked. And just like, yeah. It was very funny. It was. I would absolutely watch that with him again.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna watch it because I missed the whole first part of it.
Yeah, maybe you have to make that as part of the tour next year.
Yeah, I think
try not to.
Yeah, now we'll make it a standard part of the tour.
Yeah, try not to get like invited to another Hong Kong Legends dinner or something.
Exactly.
How about that?
I'll try my best. It's very hard when I'm in Hong Kong. So legends be inviting me left and right, right?
Yeah.
And so then that night, we then actually did something which was very special for me. Because I've taught Wing Chun in Hong Kong multiple times, but as part of the tour, I gave a 2-hour seminar for the people who are on the tour. Now, some of the people who are on the tour were our own students, obviously Wing Chun enthusiasts, a couple people from outside of the Leung Ting Wing Chun lineage, and then there were some people who didn't know Wing Chun at all, like Bruce Willow, like the stuntmen, and some people who are not from the martial arts side. They were maybe just fans of the podcast. So I taught a seminar that was kind of for like a mixed group, some people who knew some stuff, some people who were brand new. It was a lot of fun. But the seminar that I taught was, and shout out to my student, Manly Leung Ming, who set up this place for us. It was at an art gallery. Mm-hmm. But the art gallery, it's in Sam Soi Po. Now, for people who don't know, Sam Soi Po is part of Kowloon. It's a very local area. It is also the area where the restaurant union was, where Yip Man first started teaching. Yeah. So this is a very kind of old school part of Hong Kong, very, very local, not a lot of expats and foreigners there. And it's cool art gallery. It was like on the second, third floor, something like that. And they just finished having a Bruce Lee exhibit with Shannon Ma's art. And it was a gallery of all these Bruce Lee paintings, which were like photorealistic.
They're amazing.
And they were framed and they were all around. And what was great about this art gallery is it had the aesthetic because it was an old 50s Hong Kong building. Yeah. And you had like the checkered tiled floor. Mm-hmm. And it was like everything was like, it was like a building that you would have seen at the time Yip Man was teaching at that time, like that old style Hong Kong building.
It was probably like an old apartment before it was that, right?
I'm not sure what it was, but it was awesome. Mm-hmm. And it was converted to an art gallery, cool. Right? And this was the spot that my student Ming got for me to teach my 2-hour class, because I would have had no problem teaching at the Martial Club, but we had already spent a fair amount of time at the Martial Club that week from Maxifu stuff and going to see Bay Logan. But I was like, yeah, I mean, it would be easy for me to teach there, but I want my students to see more of Hong Kong. So, so we go to Sam Soi Po. I taught the class, and at the end of the class, the guy who was working there, we want to take the traditional group photo because we're in Hong Kong. The Sifu, meaning me, sitting down and everyone flanked around. That kind of traditional photo, right? And I asked him. I said, is there a chair here? And he says, yeah. So he goes, Sifu, you should use this chair. And then I go, he goes, this was the master's chair. And I'm thinking like it's the chair for the masters to sit in. It's it's the master chair, right? Mm-hmm. And I go, it's the master's chair. He goes, yeah, it was his. And I go, what do you mean it was his? He goes, wait, this was Yip Man's chair. And I was like, wait, what?
Oh, yeah.
And he said, because that area, Sam Soi Po, Yip Man had taught there at the restaurant union, and this chair he had gotten from a student of Yip Man or from Yip Man's son or someone, and they donated it to the art gallery because they didn't want to get rid of it. It was Yip Man's chair. Yeah. And that was the only chair in the place, and that was like the chair that the dude was sitting on. So it's like he just goes to work and he's like just sitting on Yip Man's chair, and he's like, oh yeah, why don't you go ahead and use this thing? It's like funny how if people are not into Wing Chun, of like unsentimental. And then so there I was. I sat in Yip Man's chair, and I don't know. I felt a little.
We all got a little.
I felt a little verklempt. I was like, oh my god, I'm sitting in Yip Man's chair, and we took the photo.
And we're just like, you're looking at me, and we're just like
what? and then we took a photo of the chair in the gallery by itself, which is really cool. I think Jose posted that photo. And he even put it as his wallpaper. And then, of course, everyone had to take a shot in the chair, sitting, chilling. So everyone had a chance to sit in Yip Man's chair. Mm-hmm. After we left, And before we kind of disbanded for that night, because we were in Samsoipo, I brought the students around to show them where the original restaurant union was, where Yip Man taught. And then there was another place called Samtaichi, is a little temple, the Three Prince Temple. And Yip Man used to teach there when he couldn't use the restaurant union premises, presumably because they had meetings in there or something was going on. He couldn't teach there, so he had to have like an alternate location nearby to teach. And so he would teach at the Samtaichi temple because it was just a temple. He could just go and teach there for free. He didn't have to pay any rent. And that's where he taught Chi Man. Chi Man brought me to that temple and told me, this is where Yip Man started teaching him Chi Sao. Sometimes William Cheung was there and other students were there. So there was like a pocket of students who learned there. And we walked by, we took some photos, and it was like really cool. And especially after the energy of having had the Wing Chun seminar and sitting in Yip Man's chair, and everyone was having such a good time. And then there we were at the old temple. And then, I'm pretty sure we went out that night afterwards, but that was kind of the end of the tour.
We actually didn't go out that night because I tell you, we kind of ended up, I think, because we'd just been... we were getting tired, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, because Cara, Andrew, and I, the previous night, we'd gone out with Jose as well for food. So that for those 2 or 3 days in the middle, we were kind of going out for food. So that night, once we got back, we'd been discussing what next delicacy we were going to eat.
I see.
Right? So we'd been like looking for some goose. Right? So there's
we
found a place called...
night.
Yeah, that was the goose night. So we went to a place called the Honky Goose, like roast goose restaurant.
What'd you call me?
Oh, I'll tell you again and after the thing. So no, I'm kidding. Anyway, the Hong Kee Roast Goose Cafe.
They always write it K-E-E, but it's actually pronounced gay. Hongay.
Hongay.
Yeah,
well, okay. See, I mean, Spanglish.
That's why you bring me.
Yeah, but we were discussing that just recently as we were reminiscing about the trip, and Andrew pointed out. He said, "I think if I don't find any footage of us going to that place and one of us didn't use the term, we were all going on a wild goose chase, I'm going to be very disappointed."
Puns for days. Yeah, so that was a very cool day. Sitting in Yip Man's chair was one of the highlights for me. The students were so super happy. And I remember after, like, a couple of the dudes got a little emotional because that was like day 4. Mm-hmm. And some of the guys are coming up to me, giving me some big bro hugs and just telling me something, And again, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic or anything like that, but they were coming up to me and they were just saying, "Thank you. This tour is like unbelievable."
Yes.
And even I was like, it's
really quite amazing, isn't it?
So it's my 27th trip here, and even I'm like, this is pretty damn cool. So that's why I can only recommend that you sign up for the 2024 Ultimate Hong Kong Kung Fu Tour with the Kung Fu Genius, and that's all I gotta say about that. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Kung Fu Genius. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius. Hit that bell for notifications. If you have any ideas for a future episode of the Kung Fu Genius podcast, go ahead and write those in the comments below. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Word is I'm a kung fu genius. Technique speaks for me, not lineage. Forget Jet Li, cause I'm the one. Many call me seafood, but to you I'm sea kung. And I produce masters. You surpassed us. Your kung fu stiffer than corpse and caskets. City Wing Chun is the house I built. Violate the gate and your blood gets spilt. Alex Richter, always the victor.
Hong Kong reminiscing.
Oh yeah,
Part 3.
Parteth the thread.
Yes.
The third. Do you want to press? You want to?
It's this one, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, here we go.
All right. You funny. Here we go. Children. All right. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be recapping day 3 and 4 of the classic. Oh my God, that was horrible. Horrible. Let's try this again. Yeah, you can sit in Yip Man's chair. No big. I want to do that again. Wasn't quite there.
It was awful.
It was awful. I was awful. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be discussing. You will not be discussing. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be recapping day 3. Recappings.